Welcome to Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie and the host of this podcast. Today, I am really excited to introduce a Reverend Dr. Temple Hayes. So, Reverend Dr. Temple Hayes grew up in South Carolina and spent the earlier part of her career as a business owner. Having served 3 years of military service in the United States Army Reserves, Temple became a Science of Mind minister in 1991 and an ordained unity minister in 2007. Described as a prophet and mystic for our times and the new spiritual leader the world needs today, Temple Hayes is a difference maker, a spiritual leader, author, international motivational speaker, humanitarian, life rights advocate, shamanic practitioner, and president and founder of Life Rights and Global Peace Workers. She has served many years globally as a spiritual leader of New Thought communities that transcends religious denominations, embraces all ethnicity, and reaches beyond national borders, as well as on leadership teams of the Association of Global New Thought. She shares weekly inspiration with her listeners on her radio show, The Intentional Spirit, and is the author of the following books: The Right to Be You, How to Speak Unity, and When Did You Die, and the CD motivational series From Good to Amazing. She's a contributing author to the inspiring book Crappy to Happy: Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy, Mayhem to Miracle, and Meditation by Sacred Publishing. That's quite a bio that you have there with so much experience. So a warm welcome to you, Temple. It's such an honor to have you as a guest.
It's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
So I can't wait for you to share so much of your experience with the listeners today. But first, let's start talking about your book, When Did You Die? So just can you
Yes.
describe what that book is about and how you came to choose that title? It's an interesting title.
It is, and it's not one that people want to talk about, as we know, because we'll do anything to avoid talking about dying. It came to me in a meditation, and it was very clear from my archangels and my spirit guides that the title of the book was to be "When Did You Die?" Even though my publicist said people probably aren't going to be happy about that title, I said, well, it's a God job, and it's the way it needs to be. So it's When Did You Die? 8 steps to stop dying every day and start waking up. So the premise I take is that people spend time thinking about, am I living? Or, oh my God, one day I hope I don't die. But the missing is in between, as that poem would say, the dash of when you were born and when you literally physically die, of what parts of you allowed to die every day of your life. And of course, you've already figured out, I'm talking about an energetic death. And so it's addressing the things that we sign up for that we don't really want to do, the family system we continue to repeat without getting the help that we need or the integration. It's the people that are in relationships that they're not happy. It's likened to the conversation you and I had a moment before we started here about people get this nudge to take a move, to take a chance, and they don't. All those kind of complacencies are settling. Or the person that won't get another dog because when they were 5, their dog died and they don't want to be hurt again. They don't realize that they're cheating themselves of a life of joy and love, right? So the book gives tools and steps that people can use and questions they can ask. Are you dying? Are you energetically dying? And if you are, what can you do about it to change your life?
Oh, I love it. And it's so true because people, have a very passion for that myself because people, they get stuck in the rut
Mm-hmm.
of feeling like they can't change or they can't transform their life. And it's very true. It's like they're dying inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we can become, we can walk in life through like two different people. Externally, we appear very polished and put together. Internally, things can be really messy. The beauty for me with When Did You Die? It also is a personal story because I was born into a very small religiosity family of deep rooted, and they discovered I was gay when I was 13 and a half. My grandmother told me she was sorry she wasn't going to see me in heaven. And I'm thinking, I don't even have my driver's permit. Okay. And you're talking about not seeing me in heaven. But that being said, so I went on this journey of a lot of rejection. I mean, I'd get the trophy, I'd be president of the student body, I was the All American athlete, but inside it was a messy story. And I was literally creating what I would call today a slow suicide. I found myself judgmental about people that kill themselves, take their lives through the years because my family has had two aunts kill themselves. And so the survivors, go through so much. But when I got off my self-righteousness, I was committing a slow suicide because the car accidents I drove away from, I shouldn't have. And so for 15 years, I drank. I never got better at it, but I drank a lot and almost killed myself. And so that is my personal story of how I was dying, how I was always motivated, had a lot of energy, could run circles around most people, energetically speaking, but I was slowly decaying in my consciousness of losing the will to be here on this earth. And it caught up with me at 38 years old. And so that's when I realized I have soul loss. It's like my soul doesn't want to be here anymore. I had like this huge soul toothache, like, oh, something's wrong. And fortunately for me, I was introduced to a shamanic practitioner, and went to work on myself and do we're always working on ourselves, but the biggest piece was bringing me back to life again. So it taught me a lot, my new friend, because I understood, because I had like degrees in therapy. I mean, I had been to so many therapists, and I'm waiting in line. I'm an advocate for get help when you need it. But what the path that we're talking about is a path that therapists can't get to,
Mhm.
right? Because when you go through certain trauma and certain crisis in your life, you leave your body in order, you anesthetize really to cope with it. So you can't ask a therapist, help me with this, when you weren't there in the first place to even cope and get through it. Does that make sense? So
Mhm.
part of the work I have learned is how to get in a back door of a person's soul reading and help facilitate a letting go that they can come back to who they are naturally. And it's just turned into the most beautiful experiences of my life.
Yeah, that's quite the journey that you've been
Hmm.
on for a very long time, since you were 13.
Right.
It started. Um, what advice would you have to people today that, so you said you knew that at 13 that you were gay. Is that the term you used?
Well,
Or,
as we know, they called it homosexual back then. It was a very ugly word and it didn't sound
Mhm.
very promising. We've kind of evolved in our humanity, but um, yes, my first relationship of any real nature was
Mhm.
with a girl that was 4 or 5 years older than I was. She was almost 18 and I was 13 and a half. And my father walked in on us. Just being intimate. We weren't being
Mhm.
sexual, but we were being intimate, and he flipped out. Um, and that was that. So I went to a specialist for a homosexual assessment. And
Mhm.
I was terrified that they were going to put me in a sanitarium or a
Mhm.
long-term health clinic, because people, they still
Mhm.
do that. And people, it can happen. And it certainly happened to people where I was from. They
Mhm.
would just say you were a little off,
Yeah.
and you were of the devil, and let's just take care of you right now. So not a, I know that kids say now it's hard. Well, I feel for you, but you ought to have been part of it then, because
Right.
you really thought you were going to be dead. And but it
Hmm.
was it was so hard because I went from being one of my grandmother's favorite and
Hmm.
named after my grandfather, her husband John Temple, and family gatherings to like the room would go quiet when I would walk in. And you feel those things,
Hmm.
when you are a teenager, because you're making it all about you already. So
Yeah.
to add that in. But what I know to be true is the way we are created is the way we're meant to be. So to what I would say to people, that you find yourself in a situation, circumstance, sexual preference, questioning a way of life, spiritual choices instead of religiosity, career that you don't want to follow the path of your father or your grandfather or whatever it is, you were given that for a reason.
Mhm.
And don't deny it. Find your own team that will stand with you and for you, but you got to do it first. You have to own it first, and then you'll find there are other people that will support you on the journey for that. But never give up, because for me, the psychology is there's a difference between making mistakes and thinking you are one.
Yeah, that's such good advice. Do you feel that you incarnated for taking this role and helping other people?
I do.
Hmm.
Yeah, I really do, because I got the message at 5.
Hmm.
I remember it like yesterday. I was outside in nature. I was hanging out. I was climbing a tree, and I heard this message that I was here for as a 5-year-old. So what would the word be? I can't say it was the word purpose. That was probably too big of a word, but that I was here with a message. So that has been my life mission, was to continue to grow into, what is that, and how does that unfold. So absolutely, yeah, I do feel that's part of why I'm here. I think it's why we're going through the evolution of people changing their bodies, changing their gender, doing all of these things,
Hmm.
because um, love is love.
Hmm.
And we're showing people that love can come in any package.
Absolutely. I'm there 100% with you. Um, and it's such an important topic, I feel. Uh, a couple of years ago, I felt we were going in the right direction and people were becoming more accepting, but now I feel like we are dividing our country into two camps of the liberal and the not so liberal thinking.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think it's such an important message to like you said, stick to your heart, stick to your truth, who you truly are.
Hmm.
People are never gonna, the way I look at it, live their life purpose, or unless they listen to that true their heart, their self, who they truly are, and find peace with that, whether the family approves of it or not. Like you did, they said that this is who I am, and this is where I'm gonna go.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have so much wisdom, and you offer it all the time on your podcast. And wisdom is through life experience, what we learn. And I'll tell you a cute story that I think your listeners will really enjoy. So in 2014, um, my book, which is ageless, about when did you die, was getting ready to come out. And so it was going through its last editing process. So I have an astrologist and a psychic. I use all the tools I can. And so I'm talking to a psychic, the one I've used once a year. And I go, "Oh, the book's getting ready to come out." She said, "Well, your grandmother's coming through in this reading." And I said, "Oh, yeah, Ruby, my mom's mom. She comes through all the time." She goes, "Oh, no, 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 not her. Your paternal grandmother, your grandmother Lois, the one that had told me, 'I'm so sorry, I won't see you in heaven.'" I said, "She's coming through? She's never communicated with me since she died in the early 90s." She said, "Well, she is." And she wanted me to tell you that she's sorry and that you were right. And that was such a pivotal moment for me because I had integrated and changed and healed my scars so much that, you know what? It wasn't like, oh, I feel validated. My joy was I felt happy for her.
Mhm.
Okay. It's like, good for you. You're evolving in the afterlife. But the interesting thing, I was telling my publisher about it, and I said, this has occurred. And as I was telling the story, I went, wait a minute. She's sucking up to me because she's trying to not make the book. And that's not going to happen.
That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep. Because Southern ladies, they didn't like their secrets told. So, well,
right.
too bad. You should have thought about that a long time ago, Lois. But, family, we have family that we're born from, and we have family that we choose.
Mhm.
And often we are born into a family that absolutely doesn't understand us at
Mhm.
all. They don't have the tools, they don't have the ability,
Mhm.
and often the interest in even, researching. But that is the way that, to me, we become more of who we are. It's one thing to have people go, "You're so nice. Oh, you just have such the greatest attitude." Those are the people that isn't that wonderful. But it's the people that really question who we are, that
Mhm.
force us to question who we are and what we're willing to do and how we're willing to take a stand, for who we are. And that is an evolutionary process. Did I go and put flags on my car at 18 and say, this is who I am? No, I lived in that two clubs. I had the club that knew me as Temple this way and that way. And then I had the group of people intimately that knew that I was a gay gal.
Mhm.
But I totally came out at a time in my life on national TV, and I've never looked back. But that takes courage, because you hear the sensation when you were growing up. It doesn't require that much now, but back,
Mhm.
through the years it did.
No, that takes a lot of courage. I think it takes a
Yes.
lot of courage even today to come out nationally when you're a national public speaker like you are
Hmm.
and come out on television and say that. That's very, it's your intimate life that you're putting out for everyone to see who you truly are. But I think it's
Right.
also so refreshing
Hmm.
that you have that ability to truly say, this is who I am, and take it or leave it, because this is me.
Yep.
So that's just wonderful, and it's so inspirational for so many people to
Thank you.
just hear you say that. For all the people that are going through what you went through and don't know how to tell people or how to tell their family and etc. So it's very
Hmm.
inspirational and very brave. I know
Well,
you
thank you.
mentioned about going into shamanic. You started studying shamanic traditions and finding your soul. And so I know that you speak about this in your book as well. When did you die? So what are some of the spiritual or shamanic traditions that you have featured in that book?
Well, I think one of the things is for individuals to be candidly honest with themselves. Forget about how we're honest with other people, but with themselves. Just basic questions. Are you happy? Do you still have the same kind of energy that you had as a teenager?
Mhm.
Because you're supposed to. Do you believe in that you get old, or you believe in the simple aging process? We're not here to be old. We're here to age, that's obvious.
Mhm.
But old is a choice. Have you found that you are referring to those kind of languages that I feel old, I feel tired? Are you buying into all of those limitations? Have you had any major car accidents? Were you a survivor of 9/11? Have you been in a hurricane? Have you lost people? Have you ever been in a car accident? Have you ever had surgery?
Mhm.
Have you ever lost someone or a pet or people or something that you love? If you answer yes to any of those things, more than likely you have fragmentation of your energetic being. And the good news is you can get it back. You can bring it back. And so, one of the things you want to decide is how to step into the place of putting your whole self in. You gotta show up. Awareness is one of the biggest parts of it. I find is being aware and being awake to this part of it so you can be a congruent human. I could have spent the rest of my life never really revealing my private life. And I could say, that's my private life. You don't get to have that. But more than that, I felt like I wasn't being an honest person. When
Mhm.
somebody would say, do you have someone special? I'd be like, let me change the subject. And oh my God, the world's going to crash. I can't do this. And I didn't enjoy that because I love the freedom of spirit. And this is what happens when we step further in this awakening journey as you look at where you're not congruent, where you're not telling the truth to yourself. And stepping into that, then doors and ways and avenues and means and practitioners and teachers and podcasts and all those things then offer tools and ways that we can overcome. Now, in my private practice, I work with people either in person or on Zoom, and we look at where they have energy loss. We look at members of their family, living or dead, that still take their energy. We are destined to be like, here's me and here's you. Okay. And every now and then we come together, and every now and then we come together. And that is a healthy relationship with anyone. What happens with a lot of people with wounds and expectations and people pleasing and dysfunction and all that is we stay pulled from that energetic field. So a shamanic practitioner can come in and do sacred practices that separate that energy. Again, that's all we're talking about, energy. So you're more you, I'm more me, and together we can come and then we live a life like this. And that is the biggest issue with a lot of people in their humanity, with the injuries with their family, with their problems. And that's why a lot of people keep marrying the same people. They're cuter every time, but they're the same dynamic because we never heal this. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, we never heal the pulling
Mhm.
of our energetic field. When we are in the rightness of relationship, we are always more because we are having a relationship, not less. And I'm talking friend, cousin, anything. We're
Mhm.
more.
So what if people don't consider themselves spiritual? Do you have any tips or help for people in your book that could help them find that path?
Well, if you don't consider yourself spiritual, then you must be dead. That's the easiest answer I can give you. Then you're not, you're dead. Because unless you know how to make breath in your body and make your heart beat naturally,
Mhm.
there's no way you could not be spiritual because you're drawing from a spirit that's greater than you are. So it's a non-negotiable because you got here somehow and you're going to go out somehow. So to me that fascinates me that anyone would ever question that, again, because I don't know how to breathe on my own. I slept all night, and when I awoke, I realized that something created breath in me,
Mhm.
something created the heartbeat in me. So I know that I'm connected to something. And that's all it really means is the spirit of life is that we are connected with something. So you can call it nature. You can call it a vibration. You can call it higher power. It doesn't matter what you call it. But
Mhm.
until we know how to create our own breath and our own heart, I would say that we all could use a little humility because you are always a spiritual being. What's more fun is when you accept it and agree with that reality, because you get to realize you're working with natural laws and you can manifest some fun stuff and have some great experiences. Or you can deny it and it continues to deny you. And that's where a lot of pain comes from.
Yeah, in your book, you talk a lot about nature and our relationship to other animals. Can you
Mm-hmm.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we have a tremendous responsibility for this gift we call life. And I am an advocate for all living things. I believe all sentient beings have a purpose. Um, it really gives me an emotional heartache of all the misuse that we have towards other living things,
Mhm.
animals. I mean, to think that in 2022, we will still have someone kill an amazing animal for a tusk that we can reproduce all day long. And who's going to even know the difference?
Mhm.
Um, we take a lot of lives, billions, literally, every year, billions. I talked about this at the Parliament of the World Religions. We kill billions of fish and herded cattle, and they never make it to the table.
Mhm.
So we have, the good news, if you're living now, we have work we can do. There's plenty of things you can sign up for, but I believe, like you do, that we're seeing some of the ramifications from our negligence and or lack of participation, and
Mhm.
that we're all in this together. A butterfly's wings can create a tsunami effect in another country or across the ocean waters. So we do affect each other more than we ever realize. I don't know if you've heard the story about Anthony Lawrence was a major advocate for the elephants in Africa, and he stood for them. He protected them. He had refuges where they were their sanctuaries, etc. Prevented many of them from, needlessly dying. When he died, elephants came from all over the countryside and stood at his front door and wept. Have you ever heard that
No, I
story?
have not heard that story.
It's true. It's very true. You can look it up, and people didn't even know how they found out, but energetically they
Mhm.
knew. And they all showed up. They all came marching in to his property and stood outside to show reverence and appreciation for his life.
Wow.
So it's all there. This information is there. The question is, now that we know and we know better, are we going to do better? That's always the question about being a human being. But one of the things that people, I think, especially with the self-helpers, that are the trendy,
Mhm.
this is spiritual and this is that, and this celebrity's doing this, and now we're doing that. I'm not making that wrong, but I'm just simply saying it becomes trendy
Mhm.
rather than it's truly a way of life. Yes. And in that space, um, there is a real call now for us to be more mindful. And people will say, well, I I know I felt this way in my 20s. I thought the more spiritual, more connected, the more aware I became, that I'd just replace being a human altogether. I'd just be in an ashram, I'd be oming. I wouldn't have any problems because I was just doing service, seva. To heck no, that's not reality at all. I have found in my life, the more I pursue feeling connected to nature, feeling connected to something greater than myself, the
Mhm.
more sensitive I become as a human,
Mhm.
because you feel more, you are much more in tune,
Mhm.
with life itself.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And how do you feel? How do mystical experiences play a role in being energized and impassioned versus drained and disconnected?
It's learning to, have the eyes that see and the ears to hear, that one is attentive to what's going on. And it can be something very simple, like I just got my classic car repainted, and I thought, maybe I ought to just get the convertible replaced too at the same time. And I went, nah, I'm not going to do that. I've already put a lot into it. I'm just going to let that go. And so then one day somebody says, "Oh, you got your car back. It's all painted." Well, it sure would look a lot better if you got a new top. My stepson, that's what his company is. He sells convertible tops. I'm going to have him call you. Is that okay with you? So that's a very simple thing, of course, in that I said no, and life kept bringing me a greater yes.
Mm-hmm.
It can be an intuitive nudging, like I thought I would truly live the rest of my life in Florida, visit large cities, keynote across the globe, but my base would be in Florida. And 8 people in 6 weeks told me, "You're moving to California." Some of these people I've never met in my life. And it's like, okay, that's what I'm doing, because I know that I must listen when I get those messages. I'm no different than anyone else. We all get these messages. And when we do not listen and pay them attention, it often leads to crisis and struggle and hardship. It takes courage to listen, but we develop a trust muscle. It's just like exercise. You develop the muscles to listen and to move forward. Otherwise, we do get old. Otherwise, we do become more fatigued. We're not as energetic. I'm in my 60s now, and I can run circles around most 30-year-olds because it's a belief system. It's a whole way of living life. So a mystic, which we all are, we all became mystics during COVID. I mean, if people didn't get, you're a mystic because you were living in the mystery of what you had no idea about, and what it was going to be like, and the decisions that you needed to make. And in that space, a mystic really pays attention to everything around him and her, everything.
So you're in your 60s now, so that means you were born in the 1950s?
I was born in 1958. Yes.
1958. So we have the same birth year.
Oh,
So
good. So you're a 58 dog. Well, we ought to have known that, because the moment I met you, I wanted to go, hi.
So I know the time. So when you were 13, yeah, it was very different back then. I mean, I was raised in Sweden, so in northern Europe. So of course
Right.
different from the United States, but still, it was still a very conservative time to come out and say that you're gay when you're 13. So
Oh, God, yes. Oh, God,
uh,
yes. What month were you born?
May.
Okay. I'm August.
So we're two
Yeah.
months apart.
Mm-hmm.
You just had a birthday. Happy
Yep.
birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm a Leo with therapy.
I'm a Gemini. Can you guess?
There you go. Which direction are we going?
Right.
Hmm.
So I definitely have the two hats going. So I was, I joke, I'm a Gemini, right?
Of
So I'm the
course.
spirit person, the medium, and I'm the physician. So it makes perfect sense that I'm a
It
Gemini,
makes it makes perfect sense.
right? And
Yes.
I can
Yes,
talk
it does.
forever. So it fits the role I'm playing in life right now,
Hmm.
my incarnation.
It absolutely does. I would like to impart something that's on my heart. Um, we are trained in our society that the more that happens to you, and the more unfortunate things that happen to you, and the letdowns and the abandonment and the just the problems, and we're talking obviously first world country
Mhm.
issues, we're trained that when we have those kind of things, that there's less of us. And you'll hear people say, well, God, I am 40 and I've been through a lot. Sometimes I want to just give up hope. And you're like, you're 40, but the thing people need to understand is the events, the problems, the things that happen in your life are really intended to not take you away, but to bring you out, to bring more of you out. And I've been interviewing people on my show, The Intentional Spirit, for 12, 13 years. And in every circumstance, the great artist, the great teacher, the great physician, the great shaman, every person has this intentional spirit story that because of misfortune or a child dying or whatever, they became who they were meant to be. And we aren't taught that in our society. We're taught, no thrill, take a pill. So sorry you've had such a tough time. Yeah, that's right. Life is against you. Just medicate instead of meditate. And we learn to turn that around. And it's easy to do. You can write down 30 life events that you feel were unfortunate in your life. Put them away. Pull them out in a few days. Read each 30 and tell me how you're different because that happened. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think we incarnate to have certain experiences, and it's so true. You become somebody different from going through the hard times. And I mean, think about it. What would it be like if you sat on the beach in Hawaii every day and drank pina coladas? I mean, how exciting is that after 20 years, right?
Right.
You'd be looking for something to do and looking for challenges in your life, because if we just had good moments, we would never know, of course, what bad moments are. But if we just had good things happen to us all the time, we wouldn't really grow or learn anything. We would just kind of be on cruise control, right? It is the hardships that teaches us things, and we become somebody different. And so many beautiful stories come about from tragic tragic happenings to families. They lose a child or something very tragic happens, and then there is a big shift in their life and what they do with life, right? And they become somebody different, and many times affect many other peoples that also are experiencing similar problems. As I look at it, we're all connected. In the end, we're all connected. Everything that we do affects other people. So if we have a bad experience? I was sick forever, right? For years I was sick, and I thought I was never going to get well, and then one day I was well. And then I got the message from Spirit World that I had to go to med school, and then started the prereqs in my mid 40s and went to medical school at 54. So there is a never, when I was sick, did I think that I was going to go to medical school 10 years later? No, I thought I was never going to get well because it took forever. I had a stool in my kitchen. I couldn't make lunch for my kids without having to sit down because I'd pass out. And I figured maybe this is just my new life, but I kept fighting. I'm going to get well. I have to get well. My kids need me, and just kept fighting all those years. But looking back, I would never be the person I am today. I would never have gone to medical school. I would never have developed into a spiritual leader and mediumship if it wasn't for all those hardships. So all the people out there listening today that are down in the slumps and, as I say, going through the muddy field, there is a dry, sunny road waiting for you. And it's just a matter of, go and keep walking through that muddy stage that you're in, and eventually things will change. Because nothing lasts forever. That's what I tell my patients. Nothing lasts forever. You just got to hang on and keep fighting and finding the good things that you can enjoy while you're on this journey, because it's not easy to be in depression or have a physical illness. It's never easy. But it's also, I think there is no such thing as an easy life, because we look at our friends, our neighbors, but many times I think people don't realize that these the people that on the surface looks like they're having an easy time, they have problems and issues too, and you just aren't aware of that. They
Hmm.
could be fighting cancer, or they could be fighting drug problems, or they could have children that are suicidal or committed suicide or drug addicts, and we're just not aware of it. And we just see the surface of, they have a new car and they go on vacation all the time, but we don't realize that these people have problems too.
Absolutely. My wife and I were talking about just yesterday how if there was a room full of people and we wrote down all our problems and we threw them on the floor, every one of us would knock each other down to get our own problems back. And I just really, really, that's not fluff to me. I really, really believe that.
Mhm.
Um, I interviewed a young girl that her mother is a heroin addict. She's a dumpster diver. She goes into the hospital from food poisoning because she
Mhm.
eats meat out of a dumpster, and then
Mhm.
she'll disconnect the cords and go back and use again.
Mhm.
And so here's this woman, this girl that I'm interviewing her at 19 years old. For her whole life, she will be in an electric wheelchair. She
Mhm.
has no elbows, no knees, no joints, no shoulders. She falls on the floor. She's
Mhm.
called a waddler. She
Mhm.
falls on the floor and goes around. And that is her life.
Mhm.
And when I interviewed her about 3 or 4 years ago, and I heard her story, how the kids made fun of her. They would throw spaghetti at her, they would throw her down a flight of stairs, they would mess up her electric chair.
Mhm.
And I said to her, how do you make peace with your mom? And she said, well, I have been able to forgive her. And I said, well, I know 80-year-olds that are mad at their mother because they didn't get the prom dress they wanted.
Mhm.
And here you are, you have this life that you have. And there was something about talking with her. It was like I made this inner vow to myself that I would have the inability to ever complain again. Just in what, and I will tell you that in her life, she has perfect pitch and she was an honor graduate.
Wow.
So all things are possible. All things are possible.
And when you hear stories like that, then you understand that things are possible,
Yes,
right? It
they're
gives you
totally possible.
motivation to stay on
Yes,
course.
yes.
So, if you were going to give all the listeners today advice about how to live their life, what advice would you give?
Well, it's that old saying that, please be you because you can't be replaced. But that's really it, is owning your life, owning who you are, owning your originality, and really be in an alignment that nothing or no one is ever against you. When you live from that premise, I always say, if you want life to be excited about you, you've got to be excited about life, because that's the law of cause and effect. So when you are excited about the very nature that you're alive, you will start finding people that are more excited about you, who you are, new friends, different avenues, and life opens up. So open up to learning new and greater things about you, because I truly believe in my heart always that the best is yet to come.
That is wonderful advice.
Thank
And
you.
if anybody who's listening would like to learn more about you or would like to work with you, how do they find you?
TempleHayes.com, Hayes, TempleHayes.com.
So it is just templehayes.com, https // templehayes.com. And I will put that link in the podcast notes as well. So you can just go to the podcast notes, click on the link, and visit her website.
Yes.
So I want to thank you so much, Temple, for being a guest on the
Oh,
podcast today and
what a
sharing all
pleasure.
your stories with the listeners.
What a pleasure. Nice to meet another human being born in 1958. Good for you.
Love it.